So today is Celebration Sunday, first Sunday of the month. See, get it a little louder. It's also the third annual New Thought Day, celebrated around the world in many New Thought churches. We honor our founding fathers and the great spiritual teachers who searched for truth and meaning, those who unveiled the ancient wisdoms, discovered the principles common to most world religions, and brought it forth to share in various faiths and groups, such as unity, religious science, independent metaphysical churches, and others. One of those universal principles, a universal teaching, is the oneness of life, or God, the connectedness we have with all of life. We are one in, as, and of God. We are one with each other. There is no separation. All are connected, living and non-living. Our hearts, minds, and soul create our lives. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And for that, we, you and I, can and do express who we are. And we give thanks in many ways for all the good that comes into our lives on a daily basis. We can begin by recognizing the divine nature of who we are as unique and individualized expressions of God, of Spirit. We, each one of us, can begin by being love, our theme for this month. And by opening up to the idea that we are connected. That this connectedness, this oneness, is us, which is today's topic. Through practicing this concept of oneness, we start to sense that everything we think, do, and say has an impact, not only in our own lives, but in the lives of those around us. So take, for example, the beginnings of New Thought. We won't go into the complete history today because we do a back to basics theme in August and September. But one of the definitions of New Thought is this: a modern spiritual philosophy stressing the power of right thinking in a person's life. The idea that our thoughts and attitudes affect our experiences, and that the divine power of Spirit is alive within each individual. I think that's a wonderful definition for this belief system called New Thought, and of which science mind philosophy is a part of that. It's one version of New Thought. And while we call it new, it's based on ancient wisdom. Wisdom that comes from both oral and written traditions and make up the various holy texts. The Bible, the Quran, the Torah, the writings of the Buddha, and others. For example, I love the serendipity of Spirit. As I was doing research yesterday, a Bible quote popped up on my computer screen from one of the websites that I utilize. And it's a quote from 2 Timothy 1, verse 7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. In other words, if we take these words to heart, it says that our spirit, the life force, our divine nature or soul, is not and has never been one of fear. That's not how we're created. Except for the loud noises and falling, we learn all our fears. Our spirit, our God self, is one of power, of love, and a sound mind. Those are the qualities of God we've all been given. And what we do with them, the power, the love in our mind, through our thoughts and intentions, our ideas, our words and actions, that's up to each person to express in their own way, individually or collectively. New Thought principles reveal that we have free will to choose how we want to express in the world. We all do. And depending on what you listen to for guidance will generally determine that expression. Another Bible verse I found that related to this idea comes from Proverbs 16:9, verse 9. It says, "A man's heart deviseth his way, but the Lord directeth his steps." If we listen to that still small voice within, to our intuition or our gut feeling, whatever you choose to call that divine guidance that's with you at all times. The direction is there. And in each one of us, you and I, we're not only connected to it, to the one mind, but we get to use that guidance, that power, to co-create whatever it is we can focus on long enough to bring into manifestation. God, life, expands through each one of us, creates through each one of us, whatever you can conceive and believe. This divine energy is everywhere present at once. You don't even have to wait for it to show up. It just is. That's how we can describe oneness. It's everywhere present at the same time, and we're all a part of it. Each one of us, a God spark, lighting up our lives and the world with who we are. God is being love through each one of us, if we let it. So just for a moment, let's take a look at the oneness of New Thought, how it connects the many religions of the world. Because many of the early New Thought leaders and founders came from a Christian-based faith of some sort. The Bible is a big part of the teachings. It still is in Science of Mind. In our American culture today, the Bible still plays a big part in teaching valuable lessons and providing guidance to us. One of the most familiar teachers in the Christian faith is, of course, Jesus, who told us there are basically only two key commandments or principles that we need to remember. Love God, love and serve others, or life. Love God, love others. Pretty easy. Next, we have the lessons from the Jewish faith, which are very similar to this. Love, and a guide to living in the world by adhering to the Ten Commandments. Pretty much the same principles. The Baha'i also embrace the idea of serving others, serving people in the world, not just in their own spiritual faith or communities. It's a great lesson to learn and practice. From the Buddhists, New Thought embraced the ideas of mindfulness and compassion. One of the principles of the Jain religion is to live from a consciousness of non-violence at all times. This is of special interest to us right now as we are in the middle of the 18th season of nonviolence ourselves. The Hindu teachings highlighted the idea of accepting others, the moral ideals of friendship, truthfulness, generosity, compassion, and more. Laws of life, also known as Dharma. From the Muslim teachings, New Thought lists submission to God's will as a way of spiritual practice. How many times have you ignored Spirit's message and guidance, and things didn't turn out quite a whole lot well for you? If you had just submitted to God's will rather than impose your human will on the situation. I know, me too. Along these lines, the Sikh path provided the importance of learning, understanding, and listening to the wisdom of the enlightened masters. Not just one guru, not just one teacher, but from the many sources from which it comes. This provides a sense of openness in addition to the oneness that we can experience. And finally, from Native American spirituality and most indigenous tribes' spirituality, New Thought holds dearly the idea of reverence for nature and the concept that Spirit is in all, in everything, in everyone. Thus again, oneness is us. We credit Dr. Ernest Holmes as being the founder of religious science, one of the branches of New Thought. He studied enlightened masters that lived before him and who offered many of the teachings that eventually found their way into Science of Mind philosophy in the textbook from which Reverend read earlier. Here are a few key individuals who influenced Holmes: Jesus, Buddha, Meister Eckhart, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Phineas Quimby, Judge Thomas Troward, Mary Baker Eddy, and Emma Curtis Hopkins. Just a few, there are more. The official beginnings of New Thought go back only a couple hundred years, and yet the influences and teachings and ideas have been around for thousands of years. Today, the differences between the visions and values of the various New Thought organizations are minimal. The paths are looking more and more familiar to one another. Oneness will do that over time if we accept and allow the good to unfold and reveal itself. The same is true when we accept and allow God to unfold and reveal itself through us. What do you think would happen if we all, at the same time, came from a spirit of love for one another? Served or helped one another in an atmosphere of cooperation and service rather than competition and jealousy? Or what if, as was discussed in our recent 101 class, what would happen to the idea of evil? The idea of evil, it's not an entity, it's not a thing, if everyone stopped believing in it, that it even existed. Let's imagine a world where no one believes in evil, that any wrong judgment or what we label as bad is simply because that person is ignorant of how to use the creative power for good. That it's a misuse of good. That they don't know what they don't know. If we all stopped believing in evil at the same time, where would this man-made idea go? Frankly, I'd like to find out, wouldn't you? And what better time than right now, during the season of nonviolence, during a celebration of New Thought? Whatever we can conceive and believe, we will receive. Thomas Troward said, belief in limitation is the one and only thing that causes limitation. And from Napoleon Hill we get, faith removes limitation. Melinda Elliott Kramer, the founder of Divine Science, she said, mankind must change its perception of itself. Mankind in its proper expression is God's expression. Practicing New Thought, practicing and living in oneness with the divine and with one another allows us to put together the similar principles of various beliefs and create a new reality of peace and compassion. As I mentioned in the most recent newsletter, I've had the opportunity over the past several days to reconnect with my daughter and her family at a different level of consciousness than when they lived here before. Consciousness evolution has taken place in everyone involved. Wisdom has grown. Love and gratitude for life and each other have expanded and deepened. I've had the opportunity to share conversations, hugs, and cuddles, and love at every turn. I've been given the opportunity to be love. I'm crying because I leave in 2 days. But I've had the opportunity to be love in every moment. And yet, I recognize some moments of me were better than others because of where I was coming from in consciousness. Some were more filled with expressions of love than others. Some had more presence of God than others. But throughout all the chaos of of visiting relatives and energetic grandchildren and constant activity and chatter. There was the underlying current of pure and sacred love. I saw it. I was and am that unconditional love. In those moments, I am the eternal, unlimited, divine love. I know that love is the I am nature of me and my family and you and all of us. It's easy to recognize it, to be it, but we first need to recognize our oneness with God as love. And then we can accept and honor our interconnectedness, our oneness with each other. You and I can live a much more peaceful life. And I mean peaceful in here and peaceful in here. When we let go of all the perfectionism and control and being right and all the other ego issues that keep us separate, that keep us at odds against each other, that test our conviction and patience. One of the social media postings this week, about the passing of Mr. Spock, Leonard Nimoy, quoted him as saying, "I believe in goodness, mercy, and charity." If we're going to practice this new thought belief, this is a powerful affirmation for us to bring to mind in our service to others. I believe in goodness, mercy, and charity. I also learned a bit of natural science this week too. Some of you may already know this. It's a lesson about service to one another, an example of our interconnectedness. Did you know that bees live through the winter by mutual aid? They form themselves into a ball and keep up this dance of constant movement. They change places. Those that have been on the outside of this beehive ball move to the inside, and the ones on the inside come to the outside so that they can survive through the winter cold. Should any of those at the center refuse to move to the outside and change places, they would all perish. That same thing is true for us. If we're going to really practice this new thought belief known as religious science, or unity, or divine science, or Christian science, or any of the ancient traditions, then the first place we need to focus is on ourselves and our connection inside with divine love, with God. This awareness can most definitely lead to our own personal transformation, which can lead to a collective awakening. One step, one person, one relationship at a time. So imagine we're all doing this simultaneously. If we want to foster a world that works for the highest good of all, like the bees, and not just a select few of us, then we must continue to express in our lives active compassion and kindness, service to others, and love for all. It means walking our talk every day. For me, it means staying prayed up and coming from the highest consciousness I can understand right now. And because I'm an evolving consciousness, I know it's going to be different tomorrow and the next day. But for right now, I got to come from my highest place, my highest center. It means not only holding the vision for this church and leading in a way that provides clear direction and leadership, as well as fostering an openness that invites others to share their gifts and ideas and talents and time and love and energy. One where we all support one another in service to our highest good in oneness, but also challenging myself and you to grow into the more of who you are, because there's always more. of this beautiful philosophy, all of us, through every message, conversation, music, the children, the prayers, emails, the way we live, talk, and act, the way we serve our family, friends, and the world. Not just with the people we love or like, but also those we recognize as our special teachers that pop up from time to time. Those sacred friends who test our resolve, our faith, our commitment, and most often, our patience. And what I think is our biggest mission in undertaking as members of the New Thought movement comes directly from Dr. Holmes in the Science Mind textbook. Recorded in the final conclusion on page 423, students, where he challenged all of us as religious scientists. It's my favorite passage in Spiritual Guide of the whole book. What the world needs is spiritual conviction, followed by spiritual experience. I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. It is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. I know we are challenged every day to prove these principles, to stay connected with the divine in a space of love and kindness, joy and compassion, in the oneness of humankind, which is part of the oneness of God expressing. I pray you will bring your blessings, love, and light to this world, to this spiritual community, and to me, as we go forward and support one another on our spiritual paths, whatever they look like. Paths of eternal evolution and expansion. Will the practitioners please come forward?